Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. And yes, it's once again time to take another trip into the magical world of New Eternia as we review the brand new Masters of the Universe New Eternia Trapjaw. Of course, New Eternia is kind of a remixed idea of all sorts of Masters history and concept artwork from back in the day. And they kind of just make some alterations to classic designs and bring them into the modern era by homaging the past. It's a really cool line, and in my opinion, definitely the most exciting aspect of the Masterverse line. Of course, Masterverse is a couple years old at this point, and surprisingly, it's still going very strong, and it appears that the design work and the figures themselves are only getting better. So I'm very excited about today's review, particularly because of how great this guy has looked in all the previews we've seen. But before we begin, if you haven't subscribed yet, please be sure to do so. We recently crossed the threshold of 5,000 subscribers here on the channel, and we were really thrilled about that. Also, be sure to like the video because it really does make a big difference. With that out of the way, let's begin. As I noted in my Man-at-Arms review, it's so great that they finally kind of answered the call of many reviewers and fans, such as myself, and put the great artwork front and center right there on the packaging. This is definitely a fantastic packaging redesign for this line. As a matter of fact, to the casual observer, I have a feeling that they'll think this is a completely brand new Masters of the Universe line and not just a refresh of Masterverse. Gone is the bland, weird symbol-filled packaging with the blue on it, and now we have the cool rocks. It almost looks like a volcano exploding, and that classic font where it says Masterverse. The figure itself looks like it's a part of the action, as they've kind of done a die cut kind of thing all around the painting of Trapjaw, and they have the figure right there in the middle of it. On the side, you can see that they kind of have a panel that helps the artwork wrap around as we see more of that cool painting, and some really cool stuff with New Eternia Battle Armor He-Man back here fighting Triclops, so that should be a great figure. And of course, Castle Grayskull, so hopefully we get a New Eternia Castle Grayskull at some point. Because, you know, Lord knows I need another Castle Grayskull. Down here we do have the barcode, if that helps anybody out. And on the side we do have some more really cool artwork. Now I'm totally okay with this still being on the side because I think it makes the figure stand out when it's displayed to the side like this for all those inbox collectors. And on the back, gone are the paintings, and now we have toy photography. And it gives you a little bio at the bottom. Now I'm always interested in these bios because they switch things up. It says Trapjaw, evil and armed for combat. Victory was in reach as Trapjaw raised his cybernetic claw over Man-at-Arms. As He-Man summoned the power of Grayskull, Trapjaw suddenly crossed dimensions into a shattered world, New Eternia. So just like Man-at-Arms in this same series, and I'm really glad that they paired up the artwork to where it kind of looks like, you know, they're in the same battle against each other. It sort of connects. But apparently, these are not different versions of Man-at-Arms or Trapjaw. These are just the original main continuity prime versions, if you will. Only they've been transported to the world of New Eternia. And just so you can see, indeed, this looks like the same battle going on with the same colors and the same style of painting. Well, that's enough looking at the packaging. We'll go ahead and take them out. And much like a lot of other lines right now from other companies, you have a bag full of the accessories. And here he is, good old Trapjaw. Of course, we all know Trapjaw is one of the most classic villains in all of Masters history. He's definitely one of the most easily recognizable characters in the entire line. So I think there's always a lot of excitement when there's kind of a completely new version of the character because everyone wants to see what Mattel will do this time. And I have to say, first impressions are so strong with this guy. I mean, really. I'll just say that one thing's for certain before we get into everything we need to know about this guy is this is a strong rendition of Trapjaw. And at the end, we'll definitely put him up against some other versions to see how he compares to previous ones and where he ranks. All right, friends, let's get down to it. So first things first, I always like starting with the head sculpts on these figures because I think it tells you a lot about the design and kind of what they were going for. And definitely with this Trapjaw, this is a very classic looking design. Of course, I really like the caveat with he and Man-at-Arms both that these aren't supposed to be new versions of the characters necessarily, and the reason they look so traditional is because they're just the standard versions that have been transported to New Eternia, where they may have gotten some different costume parts or different, in this case, different you know, body parts. But they're the standard versions. And so it kind of gives Mattel an excuse to take the standard versions and just add things to them. They were very careful not to do much to differentiate the head sculpt from the classic version of the character that we all know and love. I really love all the little bolts and things that they have around. And of course, Trapjaw's weird thing that he's always at up here, which is like a little circle. You almost expect him to be on a store rack or something. As we move around, you can just see that the rest of his football helmet is intact. Of course, as usual, you know, the jaw opens, and this time, though, they always do something a little different. And this time when you open it, they have gone full Dr. Tongue from Day of the Dead, and it is this disgusting mass of just, you know, red flesh down here where his jaw truly is gone. Not just damaged, but it is gone. There's nothing left. And I just think that that is as gnarly as all get out, and I'm surprised that they were allowed to go that far with it. So it looks really, really good. I'll also say that in terms of facial expression, they've definitely went with probably the most serious facial expression that we've ever seen on a Trapjaw figure. All right, so looking at the rest of the figure, you can see that he has this harness here. Now, I don't believe this is removable, and instead, I believe that this is just fastened on to the actual chest of the figure. Then you have these kind of more rubbery straps that are going to it, and then you have this on the back for a little bit of weapon storage. Now, this isn't really too different from anything we've seen before. It kind of tips its hat to some of the tech designs that we've seen in the past. But I will say that this whole strap piece right here is kind of a different kind of thing than we usually see out of Trapjaw. It's definitely, you know, adding a little bit more techiness to keep him from being so plain. Now, if you wanted this to be a more classic Trapjaw, you would almost think that you could remove this piece because it's not really glued up here or on the chest, but it is, I think, glued into place back here and in the front. Now, if I had to guess, there was probably some point in this figure's development to where this was not intended to be glued in here or here, and that they're just supposed to peg in. If you're brave enough to try it and you just want to pull these out, I'm pretty sure that there's probably tabs in here. You could probably do that, and it would probably be okay, actually. Now, I have no idea. Maybe it wouldn't be, so, you know, don't blame me if you ruin your figure. For whatever reason, in production, they said this isn't going to work, and they glued it in. So I'm okay with that because I like the extra strap. It almost seems like something that was missing from Trapjaw before, actually. And there's things like that all through the new Eternia line where they almost complete designs, like on Zodak with the shoulder pads. I thought I'd hate the shoulder pads. Now I keep them on because it almost looks like he's missing something without them. And then moving on down, we have his WWE champion. We have his belt right here with the skull. And honestly, I think this is my favorite rendition of the belt ever, actually, because you can see not only do they have the skull and all the little sculpted bits and details, but they've also done this like dry brushing of gold on it to where it almost looks like it's kind of been worn down a little bit. For what Masterverse sometimes can lack in paint, they're always doing cool finishes and tricks with plastic to make things look a little more detailed than they actually are. So I really appreciate that. He has the full-on furry underwear. You can see he's wearing a purple Speedo because he's just that kind of guy. And down here we have his famous robot legs. And this is a really nice rendition of those robot legs with the cool green vents right here on the front and the very familiar details that we expect down here. On the back, you can see that there's some kind of cool straps right here keeping his leg supports on, and what almost looks like a calculator back here on his back. Now, you'll notice that I didn't talk much about the arms yet because I was kind of saving those till the end. I love all the techie details and things, including this little vent up here that we see on the side. It's definitely very classic. They did not opt for putting a lot of green down here, so that was a slight visual change. But by far the most interesting arm is this one. And you can see that he's went full-on cyborg over here. And it's just so cool. I absolutely love these giant ridges on the top. It's just really gnarly looking. It almost looks like something you would see in an 80s British comic book. It's just really neat looking. And I love how posable it all is. It all works off of these really nice flexible ball joints on both sides. It looks more robotic than we've seen for some time. It almost kind of tips its hat to the 2000X version. And so I'm really liking that. I think that it comes together perfectly. It looks like something out of Judge Dredd, like the Angel Gang or something like that. Not only that, but if you look closely, they've added some like paint wash details over this plastic and have really made it look messed up and metallic-y. And that is just a fantastic little addition that they've added, even going as far as to paint this bolt right here that's keeping his elbow pinned together. Even down here under the elbow, he has little spikes coming out, kind of makes him look cooler. So this is a very impressive look for Trapjaw. I think this is the best the robot arm has ever looked in the history of the character. Not only that, but as we'll get into later, he does have a butterfly kind of joint going on right here to where you can bring it really far in or really far out that way. So there's just so much to love here. Of course, if you were to take the belt up, you can see that he just has the purple underneath it, as is tradition. In terms of articulation, there's a lot to talk about, but you know me, if there's any kind of alternate head option or alternate look option, I like to switch those out before I do those sections so that you can really see it and set with it for a while instead of just seeing it once during the review. In the next section of the review, we'll get into this thing, which is like an attachment where he's like chomping down on people with this little jaw, but the cool part is that you can remove the jaw from it, and it's weird on the directions, they don't even mention this for whatever reason, and you can switch these out. So if you want to, you can totally just unhinge the jaw right here. And here he is without the jaw, and it truly is disgusting. So that's awesome. But you can go ahead and replace it with what was on the accessory. And it becomes the most non-traditional thing about him. However, it looks so much to me like some of those Four Horsemen designs. So I do think that it homages that just a little bit, but it still kind of goes its own way. It kind of looks like, I don't know, like a crazier version of Jaws from James Bond. So this is so cool, and I think it's a great option, and I personally love this too. So it's not one of those things to where I'm not even sure I could say I prefer the classic look over this. It's just so neat looking, and I just think it really kind of gives the figure an edge. But that then means that you can take his little claw gadget and you can put this on there. And so it gives it a little bit of visual variety with the purple. Now that we have that switched out, I'll also show you that before we do articulation, you can get rid of his blaster rifle, which it's great that the vents there are painted gray. And that comes out, and there's multiple attachments that you can choose to add. I'm going to go ahead and add the little jaw here. All right, so articulation. Like I said earlier, the jaw opens up and you can have it go into papaw mode here or completely open like this, especially this jaw. With the other jaw, you can't like go past, but here you can go like way past and even cover his eyes with it because it's so big. Not only that, but he has plenty of articulation at the shoulders. A little bit, there was a little bit of paint slop on mine, but I was just able to take my nail and just get it off of there pretty easy. He does almost get to 90, but the little vents on the shoulders stop it from flexing all the way up. Not only that, but he does have a rotation at the bicep. He does have a double joint right here at the elbow, and it goes about as far in as the muscles will allow it. We have hinges here at the wrist, and the wrists can rotate. For the diaphragm, we once again have the spectacular diaphragm joint that the MASTERVERSE offers us. That is a full 360 joint that can go every which way. So I love how natural this looks because the straps kind of cover that join right there. So it does end up looking very natural, kind of like Man-at-Arms. We do have a rotation right here at the waist. We can do a split, and just like Man-at-Arms, they have added drop-down hips. Check it out. All you have to do is pull, and all of a sudden you get all sorts more clearance to work with. This is so impressive that they have added this. And I've been waiting thinking that they would never do that, but they certainly did. So they're always upping the ante with these figures and just making them the best that they can possibly be. The kicks that you can get are excellent as a result of that drop down hip, and it's amazing what you can do with these guys. I especially like that they have the cuts right here in the furry underwear on the sides, which allows it to not get in the way at all. So it's so impressive, and I wish other companies would take a cue from Mattel on this. You do have rotations at the legs. You do have a double jointed knee, and you do have a rotation at the boot. You have hinges at the ankles. You have great rocker ankle pivot down there, and you can flat foot just about anything that you want to with this guy, and it gives him quite a bit of extra stability when it comes to getting those hard to master poses like that. As I said before, you can totally remove this belt if you want to. All you have to do is just take this and thread it back out. It's not something I really care to do though, because, you know, I mean, why would you? The belt looks awesome this way. If you wanted to see it with the purple, there it is, and that's great. But I love the big green skull logo belt. The other point of articulation is this awesome butterfly joint that goes in and out over here on the shoulder. You can bring it up about this far, which is totally understandable because, you know, this thing would get in the way. You bring it down about that much. It rotates at the elbow, it goes down at the elbow, it does anything you want at the elbow because it's just a giant ball bearing. So you can go up about this far with it, you can go all the way around, you can go all the way straight if you want to. So it's pretty unlimited, honestly. You can do it about however you like. So I really do appreciate that sort of motion, especially when this is one of the signature elements of the character. And just so you can see, here he is with the jaw attachment with the standard classic jaw. Speaking of the attachments, there are some storage spots back here to where you can actually store every one of them. So if you wanted to, you can take these hooks that are on these attachments and simply just put them in back there. Now with the sword, it doesn't have the traditional hook, but it does have the sides. So you could probably, yeah, just hang it off like that. Although it doesn't work quite as well as the others, everything is still storable. So I think that's a terrific feature that this figure has. Now here's something I've never once thought of, is why not just give Trapjaw a sword attachment? I mean, He-Man and Masters of the Universe is this, you know, sword and sorcery brand. So doesn't it make more sense for him to be able to get into like swashbuckling sword fights to have this kind of attachment? Something I've truly never thought of. And what's great is that if you remove this thing, it doesn't really look like an attachment. It just looks like a standard sword that He-Man or anybody could use. Of course, it would be more of a dagger, I guess. You can definitely see that He-Man can hold it just fine. And it actually looks like it's supposed to go along with his axe. It even has the same wraps and everything. So I truly think, and it has the same wraps as the power sword too. So I almost think that they've included this as an extra accessory for your He-Man. But as I always say, watch out, because this appears to be some kind of paint here, and anything gripping this for too long is probably going to wear it down. And of course, here's the classic hook attachment, and I absolutely love this. This is probably the most threatening out of all the attachments, and it's just so cool looking. Gives me some Captain Hook vibes. I think the only thing I would have liked to have seen is maybe to have had a little hinge here to position the hook in different ways, but you can of course rotate it and get it to do about whatever you want it to. This is very threatening, especially when he's like, "Curse you, Peter Pan!" You know, this is great. I love this attachment. Well, it's definitely a good opportunity to look at some previous versions of Trapjaw. Of course, just for fun, we'll look at the Origins version right here. I don't own, of course, the original old school Trapjaw. I was a kid of the early 90s and late 80s, so I kind of missed out on that. But you can see just how much and how accurate that this is to the original just by, you know, updating some things. In practice, it is essentially the same design. All right, now this is probably the more apt comparison, because we're going to look at the Masters of the Universe Classics version from the Four Horsemen, and we're going to look at the previous Masterverse version that was an adaptation of Masters of the Universe Revelation. You know, I do a lot of comparisons here on this channel, but this is by far one of the most interesting that I think I've ever done, because it does weird things to my brain. I mean, they're all essentially the same character design. There's very little difference between any of them, actually. But it's just so strange to see them all three side by side. And in my mind, it's almost like you could combine different ones of these and get the other. Like you could almost take the really gnarly design from Revelation and combine it with a more traditional rounded off design of the classics, and you would probably get Masterverse right here in the middle. It really does feel like a combination of those two. Definitely a few things to keep in mind. There isn't any parts reuse between these two, except for, I guess, like the ab section, which is just the standard, you know, Masterverse kind of body at this point. Other than that, these are completely different figures. So don't think that Mattel cheaped out and decided, you know, they would reuse some of these parts, because honestly, they could have, and it probably would have been fine. They probably could have reused the legs. Nobody really would have cared. But instead, they have opted to do something completely different. You know, maybe the furry piece is the same, perhaps, but truly, this is its own thing. You know, truly, I don't think you could go wrong with any of these. But I'm going to say, and this is, you know, this kind of hurts my heart a little bit to finally dethrone the champ right here. This is going to be one of those rare situations where I say that this is now the best version that you can buy of Trapjaw. Ah. Ah. Yes, I know it's a shock to everyone, but look, I just think that this is the coolest, most modern looking version you can possibly get of this character. It isn't one of those situations that I've talked about in the past where, you know, it's overwhelmed by the amount of paint work that's over here on the Classics version or something like that. I mean, it really is just impressive. It has to do with the cool sculpting. It has to do with the look of the figures. And I think that this is the best representation of classic Trapjaw. Of course, if you're looking for something that really doesn't deviate very much and just adds a couple of little details, it's going to be the Classics version. But to me, I like this because it's more in line with the gnarlier, more serious looking Trapjaws that we've now seen. The Revelation version is really neat, but there's something about the tongue that's always been off-putting to me in the facial expression, like he's too toothy or something. I think all of that has always kind of kept it from being at the top for me, but this is a head sculpt to remember right here. So all of that's solved, and this is by far the best Trapjaw you can buy. And here's Trapjaw alongside our whole gang of New Eternia villains. In total now we have 8 distinct villains from the New Eternia subline, and I'm very excited to see what else we end up getting. I would be extremely curious to see what they do with Scareglow, so hopefully we'll be seeing that soon. So at the end of the day, this version of Trapjaw is pretty much the best you can possibly get right now. They pretty much nailed down the design of this character and have created something that really is a fantastic combination of different things that have come before while having some of its own cool new ideas. I have a feeling that this will become one of the most popular of the Masterverse figures, and so for that reason I would definitely grab one sooner rather than later if I were you. There's really nothing I can say that's really all that critical about this figure. It's an incredible achievement, and if they keep up this level of quality, then I think that we're looking at a very bright future ahead for the Masterverse line. Well friends, although that will do it for me for now, I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this review. If you have, hitting that like button really does help us out. And of course, hitting the subscribe button would be something we would really appreciate. And let me know down below in the comments. Do you agree with my assertion that this is probably the best Trapjaw that we've ever gotten? Let me know how you're feeling about this new version. And as always, God bless you and yours. And I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.